Things are looking awfully desperate in the pre-built department for system integrators. Now, what do I mean by that? Consider this iBuyPower rig listed on Amazon for $749. iBuyPower is an SI much like CyberPower, Origin PCs, and ZXT BLD even. They bring multiple components together and sell them as one package, right? A full PC build. Now, they're calling this one a gaming desktop. They've stuffed it with a Ryzen 5 3600, which, well, it's not bad. They threw in a 240 gig SSD, okay, entry-level storage, but it's packing a GT 730. Are you freaking kidding me? Right, in a gaming PC, a GT 730 is worse than most integrated graphics out there. And it gets a lot worse than this, by the way. This is just one example of many. We're gonna talk about all of them. Stay with me. With tech selling out in seconds, it's nice to get a head start. And EVGA's Elite Member Program gives shoppers just that. Become an Elite Member through either the purchase of qualifying hardware or community engagement, and you'll be able to purchase newly released products a full 24 hours before the general public. That's a huge head start. You'll also have access to daily giveaways and the EVGA Associate Program, where you can earn money and rewards by offering discounts to others. Learn more by clicking the link below and use offer code SALAZAR for a discount at checkout. When a tech-savvy PC enthusiast thinks of a typical pre-built, a few things usually pop into mind. The most common is typically corner cutting. Now, not every pre-built company out there will do this, but most of them do because they have margins, they have overhead, unlike your average boutique builder or even an individual, right? They will cheap out on things like the power supply or the peripherals. They'll cause you to question value. Pre-builds certainly have a place in the market. Not everyone has the time required to build one, let alone know how to do so, and component compatibility can be a bit scary to deal with as a first-time builder. I get it, we've all been there. We've all had to build our first system at some point, assuming you have, right? And sometimes the pre-built is the sound solution. But when it comes to marketing and parts availability, especially nowadays, I've noticed a few SIs really slacking. So let's swing back to this iBuyPower listing. Gaming desktop, that is the immediate problem that I have with this one. A system with a GT 730 in it, I'm sorry, that's about as much a gaming PC as your cell phone is, right? Have fun with Minesweeper, you'd be better off with integrated graphics, as much as that pains me to say. But then they go on to include this line. I mean, why are we only going with 8 gigs here, right? This is another corner cut, and I really don't know how to justify this in an $800 system after tax. I mean, this is a reflection of the current state of RAM prices, which we've covered in a dedicated video if you're wondering, but they're feeling the effects of rising prices and have decided to offload that burden onto the average Amazon PC shoppers, hence why I wanted to bring this up. This particular listing doesn't even have reviews yet, so yeah, don't fall for it. This is an awful deal. The GT 730 aside, an $800 system with only 8 gigs of DDR4 in it, it's just, I mean, come on. And do we even have specifics about this kit of RAM? Here we go, 2666. So yeah, that's bare bones. And to add insult to injury, because that's been the theme as of late, iBuyPower decided to include dishonest product photos of a system that clearly does not have an AMD CPU in it, let alone a GT 730. Now this might be a GT 730. I mean, that's a pretty beefy cooler for a super weak graphics card. I have seen cards with this SKU that you know have beefy coolers on them, but it's usually not necessary. Most GT 730s look like this, but this CPU is definitely, I mean, even the board layout, I can tell it's not an AMD board. So this is another red flag. Pretty disappointing coming from a company that I would say is rather established in the pre-built industry. What's more, they even offer different RAM and storage configurations. So if you wanted, say, the same Ryzen 5 3600, the same GT 730, but you wanted 64 gigs of RAM in it, well, you got that option, and it's gonna cost you $1,429. Exact same product photos, mind you. I mean, the system itself, I'll go ahead and drag it over so you can see it. Yeah, it looks identical. But if you are into 64 gigs in a really weird CPU-GPU combo, yep, you have that option. And look, I have called this out so many times when reviewing smaller boutique-style system integrators, so you better believe I'll snipe it when I see it here. So I decided to look at a few other SIs while I was on this topic. Wanted to see if iBuyPower is the only one doing this. I suspected they weren't, but there are a few just worth pointing out. Now, I cannot say for certain these are gonna be here by the time this video airs. I'm just gonna show you a few that I think are fair-ish values based on other trends I've been seeing. This one's pretty darn good. It's better than that Matrix one we just saw, 1660 Super. You only get 8 gig DDR4, 500 gig NVMe SSD, and a 10400F. Under $1,000. I mean, look, the GTX 1660 Supers, if you look those up on eBay right now, your jaw's gonna drop because those things have been just skyrocketing in price as of late. So finding one included in a 900 rounded up to $1,000 after tax, pre-built, is actually it's actually pretty good in today's market. I can't believe I'm saying that. Now, while we're on that topic, I have noticed that most pre-builts in and around the $1,000 price range are only including 8 gigs of system memory. Again, that's a testament to the steadily rising price of DDR4 in 2021, so a bit of a shame there. There's not much we can do about it, though. Ooh, now, here's a listing from a pre-built company called Alargo. Never heard of them before. They have an Intel Core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte hard disk drive. Interesting. A GTX 650. 650, 1 gig, folks. That's what it gets you. $500. 6 RGB fans, though, so can't fault them there. They know RGB sells. This case, by the way, looks like it has god-awful airflow. But that aside, the Core i5 in here, let's see. Yep, Core i5 20, that's what I thought. 2400, so that's what, Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge. I get those two mixed up all the time. I think it's Ivy Bridge. But yeah, and then 8 gigs of DDR3. Looks like pretty primitive DDR3 at that. Not that I'm really surprised. For $500, this is looking, golly. This is it's getting a bit depressing. I mean, look, there's nothing inherently wrong with this combination of hardware. I mean, it's a okay starter rig. I mean, you take what you can get, right, for the price, but the price itself is, I mean, it's really not adding up. I mean, it's moronic that these cards, first off, are selling for upwards of $100 US. I don't think they're anywhere near worth that, but people see value in them for that price, so whatever. It's jacking up the markets everywhere else. But don't let this influence you into cornering yourself with a dated platform for over $500. Look, closer to $200 or $300, sure, go for it. But remember, CPUs aren't suffering the same kinds of fate that most GPUs are at the moment. Many system integrators are bundling inflated graphics cards with decade-old motherboards at this point and CPUs in a way for them to offload old inventory because they know that graphics cards are in such high demand. This is a bit like bundling. Many of these platforms can be pulled straight from OEMs like Dell and HP on Newegg for $100. So their margins are still great, but they're having to resort to these kinds of hardware combinations to sustain said margins in a very hostile market, and that should not be your burden to bear. Okay, that's why I wanted to make this video. These might seem like good deals on the surface, but especially when we're talking about Core i5 2400s, I mean, nothing wrong with Sandy and Ivy Bridge, but for this price, Jesus. So I made this video not to bash on iBuyPower or really any SI in particular for that matter, but to call to your attention the fact that market conditions are finally catching up to them. We've been feeling the effects for months. They are finally starting to feel it. They were once sitting on inventory that wasn't indicative of current supply and demand constraints. But now that it's all been gobbled up by the desperate gamers and miners out there, they too have become rather desperate. And I don't necessarily mean that this is you know, like they're so desperate for cash. Like not in that sense, even though arguably we're all sort of desperate for cash. I mean, we work for money, right? We're willing to devote much of our time to making money because we know what money gets us in the long run. It provides stability. It keeps us arguably satisfied when it comes to the foods we eat, the places we travel, the things we do with our families. But anyway, they're resulting to marking up extremely old hardware because that's all they have left. That's the only margin they can scrape up now. And desperate times are calling for these desperate measures. That's all for this one. Look, I'm not trying to, I keep bearing the bad news here on this channel, but I mean, it's the current state of pre-builts right now. And you should know that a lot of these deals are god awful. That's all for this one. Leave a comment down below, consider subscribing, leave a like, and I'll catch you in the next one. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.